Thomas here with Much Props. Going to give you another how-to video. Today's is going to be a little different than normal. It's not an actual build with an end result. I've had a lot of people asking me how I make my templates, and while there are almost 300 videos on the channel as of today, I don't go into full depth because it's an extra 4 or 5 hours worth of work that gets added on to a build video, which makes it way too long. And I know that some of you don't want to sit through that, so I thought maybe I could make a video to answer all those questions on how I attack doing templating. It's not as difficult as you think it may be. Literally, some plastic wrap. This is just a sack from a grocery store, some tin foil, duct tape or masking tape, and pretty much you have the tools to make your own templates. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how I attack it. There are, I think, 4 different ways that I primarily use. There are more than this. I haven't ever gone into actually digitizing and doing it that way. I do mine kind of a low-tech way. I know there are lots of prop makers out there that have made template videos just like this one, and there's some awesome people out there. Evil Ted, Zing Prod, Cosplay Apprentice, Bill Duran, all make awesome videos on how to do this stuff already. The only difference between them and me and any other cosplayer that you may have seen out there is when I make a template, it's for free. I'm not going to charge you to try and get you to be creative. I know that that may be a hindrance for some of you, is that cost that goes into it. And for me, I've already put in the work to do the template, and I don't necessarily need to make a couple of bucks here and there off of the template sale, so I'm going to offer them up to free as of right now, unless times get worse and toilet paper becomes scarce. So follow along with me as I show you my template process, and yeah, let's get to templating. Having a mannequin head can help quite a bit. I got mine for pretty cheap on Amazon. I'll link it on my affiliates page down below. Because I have a large head and I know that my dummy here is much smaller, I start by bulking up the shape with foil and hold it into place with some duct tape. As you do this, you're thinking about the shape you want to achieve. This method is great for really complex shapes. So I am making a generic helmet base for the first template and need the pattern to extend down past my jawline. Here you see me use my hand to get an approximate distance. I add a little bit extra to allow me to adjust the shape and cut out some poster board to tape out the flat area. Notice I only worry about one side of the template because my helmet will be symmetrical. I only have to template out one side. Once the shape is where I want it, I cover it with another sheet of foil and duct tape the whole area. This will be the surface that I start to map out the parameters of my template. To draw my lines for the template, I need to start with a center line. I kind of just eyeball the center on both sides and make a start and finish point to connect. You can use something bendable like those puzzle pieces everyone has a hard time figuring out, or a bendable ruler, which I just got in the mail after this build was finished. Once it's divided in half, I establish a bottom edge and then I go back and make adjustments till I like it. You can use some acetone to remove a Sharpie line if you need to off of duct tape. Sometimes your pattern may get littered with those stray lines you're not actually using. To make the darts, which are parts that allow the template to lay flat, you draw lines across the curved areas. It gets easier the more you do it. I've made well over 100 templates, so it's pretty automatic by now. But if you cut off the template and it doesn't lay flat, you can always add darts after. After you have all your lines down, you want to add registration marks to help you line up all the parts. Because this is a relatively simple shape, I don't need a lot, and I don't need to divide my pattern up into smaller pieces just yet. You want the least amount of pieces possible to eliminate seam lines, but at the same time enough to maintain the shape you are trying to achieve. Now it's marked up and time to cut off my dummy. I didn't show this here, but I will here in a second. I used a pattern notch to cut out the reference marks on it. It is a massive time saver, and you can get them for like $6 on Amazon or at craft stores, so definitely well worth a purchase. Lay the template down as flat as you possibly can and trace the edges, darts, and registration marks. Trust the shape you cut out. Don't try and make adjustments right here because alignment parts will be very difficult later on if you do. I use some 1, 2, 3 blocks to help keep my pattern down as I trace. Because I share my templates with you guys, I usually take the time to figure out how to divide the template up into pieces that will fit onto a piece of copy paper that can easily be printed. Like I said before, this is a simple shape, so the template is all one piece, which isn't very normal at all. I divide it into 4 parts and then label the parts with a number followed by a letter to indicate they all go together. So 1A, 1B, 1C. I also mark with an asterisk to let you know that this is only 1/2 and mark what size EVA I am using for the parts. I always give a cover sheet on my templates that explains all the marks and what exactly you gotta do with them. To punch out the registration marks, I use this pattern notcher. I used to cut triangles out with scissors, and it just takes a lot more time. Buying this little notcher saved me countless hours. If you're gonna get into cosplay and making patterns, you should really purchase one. Option 2 is pulling a template off a pre-existing shape. I bought this acrylic dome for a future space helmet build, and I thought I could pull a template off of it before I make it. So, things that are spherical. This would make a great base for, say, like a Wheatley from Portal 2, Mr. Handy from Fallout, cartoon heads from South Park. The possibilities are endless. You're just looking for that shape. If shapes are simple like this with little sharp angles, I tend to use a plastic bag. Otherwise, grab foil. Same basic concept as before, but this time you don't have to shape it. Sometimes I luck out and I can piece together templates like this by pulling off parts from random things I have laying around the house, like a vase or a cup or something. I start by making a center dot at the top of the sphere and then trace the opening at the bottom. It is way too small to fit on my head right now, but I could easily widen the hole later. This may not end up as a helmet, so I'm using it with the smaller hole opening as is. I try to mark evenly spaced segments on the bottom and then draw lines up to the top point that I made. After drawing my pieces, I know that it's way too thick to lay flat when I cut them off, so I add some extra lines down the middle to act as my darts to help me flatten it out. Then I add registration lines to help line up the parts, and then I give each part a letter so that I kind of know the order that they should line up with each other. Alright, I'm kind of taking a risk here to simplify my template for everyone else. No matter how good you are at dividing segments up, there will always be a little uneven. My thought is to pick the piece that is in the middle of all the sizes and make it the sole piece to make 6 copies from. I say it's a risk because it may not turn out to be a perfect sphere like my dome started out as, so you can play it safe and trace all of your separate lettered pieces. If you decide to do what I'm going to, just know that there's that risk of possibly making an onion shape instead of a sphere shape. The only adjustment you need to make if you're doing what I'm doing is to make the registration marks on the sides even. So fold the edges together and punch them at the same time. Just like option 1, you flatten it out the best you can and trace it on a poster board or thick paper to then use for tracing it onto your material. If you decide to make something like this out of cardboard, you would need to add extra segments to this pattern since cardboard doesn't bend like foam does. Option 3 is for the more adventurous. This method is just eyeballing it and kind of freestyling it. Usually this makes for more mistakes and reworkings, but once you get comfortable making patterns, you can kind of guess how the basic shapes will be. I have made a lot of patterns this way. You can also use these methods in combination with each other. This crown seemed relatively simple, and I know that I can make a cone simply by drawing a circle and cutting a wedge out of it. The bigger the wedge, the steeper the cone will be. And I figured the sides would just be an arch that's curled up on itself. Like I said before, there is a wider room for mistakes in this method, and I just made one. It's too steep of a slant, so I need to make a flatter arch. Poster board is cheap, and I buy it by the stack for that exact reason. Learn from the mistakes that you made and make adjustments. I use Sketchfab on my cell phone to help me work out the angles in my head. I usually don't figure out angle cuts until I start to assemble pieces, unless it's obvious. Like in this one, I know that both the top top piece and the side piece are going to need a 45-degree angle cut to make this crown. So I use a color coding system on my templates. Blue on my template edges means that there's an inward 45 angle cut. Green on an edge means it's an outward 45. And usually if a part is shaded red or has zigzag red on it, it usually signifies an overlap of another piece. One of the nice things about making it on the fly is cutting parts together and taping them allows you to make small adjustments as you need them. Or if a part is too small, you can just tape on an extra piece of poster board. The crown design has kind of a fleur-de-lis overlay, so I'm marking out a general spacing for the 9 peaks, cut a piece to represent the gap, and then I make a small section to trace repeatedly onto my template. The design doesn't make too much sense to me because a fleur-de-lis is a French thing and Arthur's supposed to be Welsh, but I'm not going to argue with Monty Python. The crown design still looks pretty awesome, so we're just going to go with it. My fourth option for this video is to find a model and simply print it out. This works well with weapons that are flat and can be built up in layers like a gun or a sword. I used this method while making the sword for Cosplay Apprentice a while back. I know Andrew DFT makes a lot of weapon templates and uses the actual gun images in game as a starting point to map off his layers. So find a side view, paste it into a document, and then size it to fit your hand. This is a small pistol, but my hands are huge, so I enlarged mine to fit the entire perimeter of the page. Print off a couple of copies, and you're ready to go. Then just cut it out. Looking at the image, I can tell that there will be a base layer, probably of 10mm foam, that I'm going to build everything off of, and then just stacking the layers up in various thicknesses to get all the details. A 3D model or other angles of the gun can help you to figure out the thicknesses that you should have for each part. People like Andrew DFT and Bill Duran take it a step further and trace out edges using computer software to make it much more accurate and easier to read. This, what I'm showing you, is kind of the quick and easy, down and dirty version. Then the last thing I wanted to cover was some questions that I constantly get. How do I download and scale it? I save my templates by scanning them in as a PDF to my computer. If you're trying to pull it on a cell phone or a tablet, unless you have extensions or program downloaded, the file will not be compatible, so I don't need you to message me and say my template doesn't work. It does. Open these templates on a computer. If my build has a template, it's linked in the description. I'm not hiding or saving the good ones for myself. They're all out there. Click on the links and download the file. When you click print, you will have the common options that you normally would see. Click on more settings and you'll see a section labeled scale. My builds are scaled to fit me because I'm building them for me. So they're kind of large. I'm a 6'3" large framed monster of a person, so scaling will probably be needed if you're smaller. You need two measurements. You need the original person size versus your size of whatever body part that thing is going on. So like my head is 24 inches around. Measure your head to see how it compares. Cosplay Apprentice has made this awesome cosplay calculator on his website that will help you to do a little bit of math to convert that number difference to a scale percentage. When you type that into the printing options, it shrinks the image down so that it fits the new specifications. And I would add a % or 2 just to be safe. It's always easier to be bigger than smaller. And that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully it was helpful to you and a bit insightful in how easy it actually is to make your own templates. Maybe this is a way for you to see that it's not as difficult as it seems. Just bulking out an item, putting some tape over it, cutting it off, and putting it onto some poster board. That's pretty much how I attack every build. So hopefully those 4 methods, one of them will work for you. If not, there are other YouTubers out there that have videos on other methods that they use. By all means, please find those videos, share them with people, share this video with people, and let's kind of create a community of creativity and positivity and sharing. Maybe you'll make some of these templates yourselves or attempt one, and your friends will be blown away with your newfound skills. Maybe. Maybe you'll get some. Yay! And eventually, someone's gonna ask you, how'd you make those templates? You can give them one of these and tell them, much props. I thought maybe y'all could like try this one on. It's a pretty good fit on me, but I want to make sure that it fits for you too. So